Thursday, the 29th day of February, 2024. Channel on YouTube, CBS News. Posted 1 hour ago, 3,963 views, 102 likes. Biden, Trump offer contrasting immigration policies at southern border. President Biden and former President Donald Trump both made trips to the southern border Thursday. The visits come as Americans increasingly point to immigration as a top issue ahead of the November election. CBS News' Ed O'Keefe and Camilo Montoya-Galvez report. CBS News Streaming Network is the premier 24/7 anchored streaming news service from CBS News and stations available free to everyone with access to the internet. The CBS News Streaming Network is your destination for breaking news, live events, and original reporting locally, nationally, and around the globe. Launched in November 2014 as CBSN, the CBS News Streaming Network is available live in 91 countries and on 30 digital platforms and apps, as well as on cbsnews.com and Paramount Plus. Show transcript. Here we go.
Begin our report in Texas, where the two presidential frontrunners traveled to the U.S.-Mexico border. President Biden visited Brownsville, while former President Donald Trump was more than 300 miles away in Eagle Pass. Biden once again called on House Republicans to help secure the border by passing the Senate's bipartisan bill. In turn, Trump blamed Democrats and migrants for the crisis that has become a top issue among voters.
I mean, look at the way President Biden holds his arms. I think every person in the United States of America should be deeply concerned about the health of our president in a very sincere and concerned way. Imagine if this was your relative, your parent, your grandparent, or an uncle, an aunt, a brother, a sister. Why, I think anyone would be deeply concerned for the health and welfare of your loved one. President Biden has family and friends and people who care about him. I'm not sure if they're all in the White House or not, or where they're at, but I do know he has them. I mean, just look at this. This is not something to trivialize or make fun of or be part of some political sport or game. We're talking about the health and well-being of a person of humanity, the President of the United States, for gosh sakes. Yes, this is not a joke. This is a very serious thing.
In the 2024 race, according to polling. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is traveling with the president in Texas.
The president and the former president who wants to replace him in the White House played the blame game today along the U.S.-Mexico border.
This is a Biden invasion over the past 3 years.
President Biden said it was Donald Trump who urged House Republicans to kill the bill that would have beefed up security at the border.
It's time for the speakers and some of my Republican friends in Congress who are blocking this bill to show a little spine.
After a record number of illegal crossings last year, President Biden, who toured the border in Brownsville, Texas,
2.4 million people came across the southern border last year in calendar year 2023. 2.4 million, and nobody knows who they are. I don't know if you'd call it an invasion or not, but that's a lot of people that nobody knows who they are. You couldn't fly into the United States like that. Of course not. You have to provide identification of who you are. You can't get on an airplane and be unknown. It's no different about the southern border or the Canadian border for that matter, or other ports of entry, cruise ships, commercial shipping. It's no different. You can't get on an airplane and fly into the United States or get on an airplane and fly out of the United States without everybody knowing exactly who you are with credentials. It's no different than the border. I'm all about humanitarian aid and assistance. 2.4 million unknown persons. They're obviously not here as citizens or on a special visa or a green card or on diplomatic passes. I mean, people aren't illegal. They're not illegal immigrants. They're not. They're people. It's pretty outrageous that Democrats, Republicans, independents, whoever's all been involved in allowing this to come about, because it's not just one person. This doesn't happen by just one person. No, I don't care if it's President Trump, Donald Trump, Congress. I don't care who it is. It's not something that one person, Greg Abbott, governor of Arizona, California, it's not something one person can do. And I'm not saying people got together in a conspiracy to do this either. I'm just saying 2.4 million is a lot of people. Doesn't matter how it came about. The question is, how are we going to go about doing something about it now? Yes, you can figure out what happened later. How is the United States, how are the people here in the United States going to go about doing something about this? I don't think there's any other sovereign nation in the world that's allowed 2.4 million people across their borders or in through their ports in a year. I don't think so. I mean, it's not by accident either. No, it doesn't happen accidentally. I don't know what the purposes are, but my goodness, we can figure out the why later. How are we going to go about providing a remedy to this, ameliorating the circumstance of this? It's a national security disaster at this point, a crisis. It's not a risk, it's a crisis. And we have just one president, Joseph Robinette Biden, so the responsibility right now does lie upon his office, his responsibility, his cabinet as well, and members of Congress to do something about this.
Is trying to show he's addressing an issue that more than 60% of voters call a very serious concern.
Just hours before the president's arrival here in Brownsville, U.S. Border Patrol and Texas State Police say they stopped people on the other side of the border from bringing across drugs.
But Chris Cabrera of the Border Patrol said that with illegal crossings into this part of Texas down recently, the president has come too late.
But I think the timing's a little off. I mean, if he would have come a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Trump, who visited Eagle Pass more than 300 miles away, continued exploiting a crisis that he couldn't solve either, hoping it'll put him back in the White House. Allies say he's planning mass deportations and detention camps, if elected. Today, he sought to falsely connect President Biden to the recent murder of a Georgia nursing student by a Venezuelan migrant who entered the country illegally in 2022.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I heard the speech of Donald Trump at Eagle Pass. No. He was very clear that someone who came across the border murdered this young woman. Of course he did. Yes. The president, Biden, is not personally responsible, but the office of the president Congress as well have a responsibility here. Of course they all do. They're the elected officials that we send to Congress and the president.
The monster that charging the death is an illegal alien migrant who was led into our country and released into our communities by crooked Joe Biden.
The president, who didn't address Trump's attacks, said they should work together.
Join me, or I'll join you, in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together.
As president, Trump severely restricted asylum and
Why is President Biden speaking about working together with Congress? He's the President of the United States. He takes an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's obvious to everyone, look at those polling numbers, that there are some enemies of the Constitution involved in this activity. I don't know who or where or what, state, local, federal, I don't know. I know it's not one person. The governors of the states take the same oath that the president does. It's in the Constitution. They have to take the oath to the United States Constitution first, then they take whatever oath they have as the governor of their state. That's in the Constitution. Not any amendment either. No, that's in the Constitution. They all do it. So it can't be just about your state as a governor. Your first responsibility is to the nation. You take the oath. You're required to. It's in the Constitution. You don't have a choice. If you don't take that oath, then guess what? You don't proceed to be a governor. And if you violate that oath, you've got a problem as well as a governor. You got to read your Constitution, for goodness sakes.
required migrants to await their court hearings in Mexico. When President Biden took office, he reversed those policies, but is now considering employing an executive power used by Trump to suspend asylum. The former president also met with Texas Governor Greg Abbott today, who's at war with the Biden administration for implementing.
You know, how did President Biden go about suspending those things? If they were laws on the books, he can't suspend a law. I mean, were they executive orders? Is that what it is? Was it members of the cabinet? I mean, how did that really come about? I mean, you got to look into this stuff. You can't just lash out, and get mad or angry or something. It's a very serious situation.
His own border crackdown, installing National Guard troops, and razor wire barriers in Eagle Pass. But we spoke to local resident Adam Rodriguez, who says concerns there are overblown.
We raised our kids here, and there's never been any criminal element. You don't have to worry about walking down the street.
And now Ed joins.
Well, who is that? Come on, CBS. You know what? Come on. Where's a voice from somebody who is afraid of walking down the street? What are you talking about, CBS? That's a little shady, I think. Yeah, that's a little shady.
Is me, along with CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez, who's in Eagle Pass, where the former president visited Thursday. Ed, the president could talk about his...
Which is today. Yes. The same day I'm making this short video.
Possible executive order, or talk about that bipartisan legislation. He talked about the bipartisan legislation. Is there a larger goal here that goes beyond the border in terms of trying to make a case against Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress and what they can and can't get done?
I think there is, John. After what we witnessed today, it was a pretty substantive briefing that the president was given in public and in front of reporters.
You know what? I watched it. Why does the Secretary of Homeland Security stand at a podium in Brownsville, Texas, and say, Mr. President, you received this briefing, you received this briefing, you received that briefing, you received this briefing. We briefed you on this, we briefed you on that. You know about this, you know about that. Well, of course, the president already knows those things. Why is he repeating it in front of everybody like that? What a foolish waste of everybody's time. He's a member of the cabinet. He serves at the pleasure of the president anyway. Of course, President Biden already knows all of these things. What a waste of everybody's time for Secretary Mayorkas to stand there and repeat himself in front of everybody. On national TV now, beamed around the world. How foolish was that? My goodness. I mean, my gosh. I just really can't imagine what's going on. President Biden already knows all of those things well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't say why the president would have the secretary stand there and repeat briefing points already. I don't know. I'm not the president. I'm not in a position to ask, but that's sort of an odd thing, but maybe it's okay. I can't say I know what's going on, but it looks odd, you know. And then for CBS to just sort of repeat it here, like it's normal or something. Why aren't they asking the same thing I'm asking? Or lots of people. 61% of people in the United States think this is a very serious problem. When's CBS going to take it seriously? Come on, Ed O'Keefe. It's not Ed, nor the other gentleman. No, it's the executive people at CBS. These reporters work for somebody. You got to remember that. They've all got bosses, all right? Yeah, they got a boss that tells them what to do. Yes, they do. Whoever that is, maybe we should find out. Who are the bosses directing these reporters what to do? Maybe we need to know that. That might be pretty helpful. Not to say they're to blame for anything. I have no idea. It's not about wrong and right. It's about asking questions. Trying to get at some information here. I can't even say it's fact or not, or fake news. Just let's get some information at least. Let's go back a few more steps. It's not these people here talking. They're employees like anybody else. They all have a boss.
In trying to demonstrate he's studying up on this, he's listening to those on the front lines who are dealing with it, who are asking Congress to provide more funding and manpower to not only deal with the situation along the border, but then to process those hundreds of thousands of asylum claims that take years to get through the system. Contrast that with the former president who went to see his ally, Governor Abbott, along the border.
You know what, Ed O'Keefe, boy, you know, I know these aren't your words. You're saying them, but you know what? Somebody's writing your story as well, and you have a boss, you know. You do. We all know that. It's okay. I can't say that President Trump, an ally, an enemy. It's not a polemic. Greg Abbott is the governor of Texas. Donald Trump is there to speak with him and meet him and listen and meet many other people as well. This wasn't a photo op for Donald Trump. No, he went and saw various things. He did. It wasn't just standing there talking from a podium. No, he went out and met a lot of people and looked at things and shook hands and was out. Yeah, he was. Whatever was set up in Brownsville, it was, it was a very different kind of a presentation.
Where they spent most of the time criticizing the current president for doing things the former president had tried to do and unsuccessfully achieved, and then.
You know what? Come on, this is an opinion right here. This isn't news. This isn't objective reporting. It's not. Granted, I'm not saying anything or criticizing Ed O'Keefe. Of course not. He is a reporter who has a job to do. He doesn't have people that work under him that he bosses around. No, he's the go-to guy that's got to do the work. And it's hard to do the work that Ed and many others do as well. It's not an easy job. No, it's not. It's his boss, the producer, the executive producers, They're the ones that are setting the agenda here. Yes.
Falsely tied the president to the murder of that college student in Georgia. He had nothing to do with it personally, even if the immigration system allowed that.
You know what? Everybody knows that President Biden didn't have anything personally to do with it. I did mention that earlier. I mean, I didn't know he was going to say that, but it's obvious. Why is he stating the obvious? We all know that. It's just like Donald Trump's not personally responsible for whatever is going on in Texas either. I mean, of course he's not. He's not the boss. He's not calling the shots there either.
Try to get through the cracks, provided no substantive suggestion directly, explicitly, other than the fact that we know, as we reported, that he's considering again the mass deportation of migrants and possibly...
You know what? President Dwight D. Eisenhower and members of Congress and governors across this country rounded up and had a mass deportation as well. It's happened before. It has happened before. Yes, it has. So it wouldn't be the first time it happens, if it does. That's if Donald Trump becomes president. I don't know what's going to happen in November, but I know this. We can't wait till November to find out. Something needs to be done now about this. 2.4 million people across the border last year? Come on. Why isn't CBS talking about that instead of reporting on Donald Trump and President Biden? They're not duking nothing out. No, why are they even, come on. This is why 61%, according to this poll reported, think it's very serious.
Other more draconian steps that had been rejected by the courts and by...
Draconian steps rejected by courts? They're the President of the United States to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's not up to a court. A court can't tell a President of the United States to not defend the border. That's ridiculous sounding. Oh my gosh. I don't know who these executives are at CBS, but they're the ones pulling these strings.
Even members of his own party in the past.
Camilo, it's now the end of February. Where do things stand in terms of the metrics that you watch so closely compared to that record number we saw in December? What's the temperature of things?
The metrics and the temperature. Oh my goodness. Well, it's hot in Texas, I think. Yeah, just check the weather. They'll tell you what the temperature is everywhere. I think so. Check the NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. They got a good handle on the weather, the sun, solar flares, all kinds of stuff. They got lots and lots of reports and sensors everywhere around the whole world. We know what the temperature is just about anywhere you want to look. That's all.
John, the migration flows here along the U.S.-Mexico border have changed dramatically over the past 2 months. In December, a record 300,000 migrants were processed by U.S. border officials. That number dropped by 50% in January. It has slightly increased in February, but it is still very much low.
What does that mean, process 300,000? What happened to those? Where did those 300,000 people go? What does that mean, processed? What does that mean? Were they shipped back somewhere? Were they put in prison? Were they released into the country? Were they flown? Where did they go? I mean, where did they go? I mean, they're people. We're not processing widgets here. Well, what happened to those 300,000 people? Where did they, what was the result of the processing? That would be an important thing to hear.
Compared to 2023, when a record number of migrants entered U.S. border custody, many of them with the intention of seeking asylum, there has been another shift here, and that is in terms of where migrants are crossing. Ed alluded to this, John, but now most migrant crossings are concentrating mainly in Arizona and California, not here in Texas. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott is attributing that drop here in illegal crossings in Texas to his actions and his policies, including the razor wire, some of which you can see behind me, that he has ordered his National Guard soldiers to deploy along the Rio Grande to deter illegal crossings. But Governor Abbott suffered a defeat in federal court today. A federal judge in Austin blocked SB 4. That was a Texas state immigration law that would have given authorities here the power to arrest, jail, and prosecute migrants for crossing into Texas illegally from Mexico. The judge said that...
Well, what is Governor Gavin Newsom doing with the crossings in California? I don't know who the governor of Arizona is, but what are they doing? Well, why aren't they cutting right now to what are those two governors doing? I mean, Governor Abbott's done something, obviously. I mean, he's done something. What have they done in those other two states, if that's where it's moved to now?
That is a federal responsibility, John.
And quickly, Camilo, you've been there so many times at the border. What could these candidates...
Governors have a responsibility to protect the people in their states as well. It's a shared responsibility. Of course it is. States have National Guards that they can call out. Of course they do. They can. Oh, yes, they can. They have a responsibility to the people who elected them in their state as well. What about New Mexico? That's on the border. Are people crossing into New Mexico? I don't know. I mean, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. That's the 4 states. But then there's that whole Canadian border. What's going on up at that border? Is there anything going on up there? They never talk about that. I don't know. That's a big border up there. It's a lot longer than the southern border with Mexico. You don't ever hear anything about that.
Or the one's the president, of course, but learn from being at the border. I mean, obviously these are spectacle, but what could they actually learn by going there?
Well, look, John, former President Trump and President Biden both came here to the Texas border to essentially blame each other for the country's longstanding and vexing immigration.
That's rather shallow. What he's saying is he just doesn't know why they're really there. That's all. I mean, the answer is I don't know why they're really there. But I don't think they can say that, perhaps, as a reporter. But that's the truth. They don't really know why either one of them are there. They can't read their minds.
Challenges. So these events were very political in nature, and we have an election coming up where immigration is a top issue.
Boy, they don't know that either. I mean, you can't characterize it like that. Maybe they're both deeply concerned about violence. Maybe that's not political. I mean, there's lots of reasons. Why do they have to go to making it trivial like this? It's politics. Well, there's a lot of reasons all involved together. You've got to do some investigative reporting to figure out maybe what's going on. It's not what's obvious.
But hopefully President Biden and former President Trump learn here today that any solutions here to the crisis along the border, any durable solution, has to be bipartisan and has to be caught up.
You know what? Kumbaya, kumbaya, kumbaya. It's a crisis. The president, as well as the governors of those states, the National Guards, and federal resources could be brought to bear immediately. That doesn't require anything bipartisan. Doesn't even require Congress.
Into law by Congress. Otherwise, the actions that they will take are at risk of being reversed by their successors, other presidents with opposing political views, or are at risk of being challenged in federal court, just like this law.
The federal courts do not have the authority to enjoin the President of the United States or governors from acting together to secure our border so we're not in a crisis. The court can't order that to be done. Can't stop it either. There's a such thing as separation of powers, you know.
Texas. So that is something that I think many residents here will encourage these presidents and candidates to do, to come together to the bargaining table and to forge an agreement on this highly contested issue.
Ed, final question to you. How much concern was there, and it was illustrated in your piece, that folks on the border, or maybe just voters anywhere, might say it's a little late for the president, and that his initial response to the border contributed to the problem, and he's showing up after the horse is out of the barn?
There's a considerable concern for that here, and I would also question, I think Camilo would too, given how trends have shifted west. Why come here when you could have gone to Arizona, where now the situation's most acute? Democratic...
Why aren't they doing some investigative reporting and finding out? Got to go back to those producers and executives. It's not Ed O'Keefe here. No, it's not the reporters. It's not John. No, it's not.
Governor there dealing with that. A swing state. Why not take up the issue there instead? It's unclear, and this trip came together quite quickly. This is a president who's been allergic to the issue, John. In many ways, he's still learning about it, the ins and outs of it, and that's part of why this briefing today was so stark, because it demonstrated...
How can they say that? How can they even say that? The implications of, if that was true, are serious. That would be a constitutional crisis. On top of the crisis of 2.4 million people coming into the country. Gosh, we really need to, we have these reporter people, these executives at these news places, they got to do a better job. It's the executives that are in charge. They are corporations, They are for profit. They all are for profit. They're not non-for-profit organizations, They are concerned about money. They are. The executives are. They have stock that trades. Of course they do. Let's don't forget.
He's trying to shine some light on the concerns of those in the Homeland Security Department, but also to some extent still himself embracing an issue that he, as a senator from the Mid-Atlantic and as a vice president that dealt with foreign policy, never really had to deal with this one, and gets angry, we know, when it's brought up to him by aides in the West Wing, knowing it's just one of those intractable, unsolvable great challenges that Washington has to...
Wow, that's rather revealing. Wonder how he knows that. I mean, really? Is that accurate? I don't know. Once again, I don't know. Who does know? We need some information. Yeah.
Deal with. Let's see if he continues to make visits like this. And notably also, let's see if he actually meets with migrants who are coming, or those that advocate for them. He's not done that.
Yeah.
Were he to, he might score some points within his own party among people concerned about those that make the journey.
Ed O'Keefe and Camilo Montoya-Galvez for us, both of them at the southern border. Thank you, gentlemen.